North Korea's presence appears to have convinced the White House to change its stance on long-range missiles after months of resistance. As the New York Times notes, the addition of up to 10,000 North Korean troops to Moscow's war effort this fall has alarmed the United States and European countries, which believe it is widening the war by drawing Russian allies directly into ground fighting. US officials said the missiles would likely be deployed, at least initially, against combined Russian and North Korean forces in Ukraine-held territory in the Kursk region of southern Russia. According to some experts, North Korean soldiers in Russia are in fear. They are afraid of ATACMS strikes. Last year, the Biden administration agreed to deliver several hundred ATACMS to the Ukrainians for use on their own territory, including the Russian-occupied Crimean Peninsula. Since then, the Ukrainian military has used many of these missiles in a campaign to strike military targets in Crimea, and it is unclear how many remain in Ukraine's arsenal. But Ukraine has remained frustrated for months by the White House's refusal to allow longer-range strikes on Russian territory. US officials and military analysts said launching a limited number of ballistic missiles at targets in Russia would not significantly change the dynamics of the war, but could quickly help troops facing an offensive in the Kursk region. It is noted that the Ukrainians could use the missiles to strike North Korean troops to dissuade Pyongyang from sending more, and this appears to have been one of the main reasons for the White House's change of stance. A brigade commander fighting in Kursk said he believed ATACMS could help Ukraine target logistics hubs, ammunition depots, key equipment and supply lines supporting the attack. The question is how much of it we have and what the supply of this ammunition will look like, the commander said. According to him, much will depend on the ability of Ukrainian military intelligence to detect concentrations of North Korean troops and other targets in Russia. In late 2023, after more than a year of debate, America provided Ukraine with ATACMS missiles with a range of 300 kilometers, which the Ukrainian armed forces used with devastating effect in Russian-occupied territory, including Crimea. At the same time, despite numerous requests from Ukraine, the United States did not give permission to strike across the Russian border at airfields, ammunition depots, and command posts.
Two days after the U.S. president gave Kyiv permission to use long-range American weapons against targets inside the Russian Federation, President Vladimir Putin signed the new Russian nuclear doctrine he had spoken about earlier. Dmitry Medvedev began talking about the approach of a Third World War, and Russia began producing mobile shelters in case of a nuclear war. The updated guidelines were first unveiled by Putin in late September, at which point former President Dmitry Medvedev said the new policy should be considered a response to the neo-Nazi Ukrainian regime and its allies for pushing the world towards a nuclear catastrophe. Medvedev was referring to Kyiv's continual push for permission to use Western-supplied weaponry for long-range strikes inside Russian territory. According to the Telegram channel Bucha, said to have links to Russia's intelligence services, the large-scale launch of missiles against Russia, including those carried by ATACMS, would provide grounds for retaliatory action by Moscow under the new guidelines. Actions aimed at isolating part of the territory of the Russian Federation are also included as preconditions for a nuclear response, as well as outlining the parameters for the use of nuclear weapons based on threats to its own territorial integrity. The updated guidelines would regard Belarus, a close ally of Russia, as protected by the country's nuclear umbrella, with any attack on the country viewed as an attack against Moscow itself and meriting a response. Deputy Chairman of the Russian Security Council Dmitry Medvedev predicted the start of World War III after the update of Russia's nuclear doctrine. The politician noted that Kiev's use of NATO long-range weapons to strike Russian territories could be considered an attack, so Ukraine and its allies in the military bloc should be prepared for retaliatory measures. In this case, the right arises to launch a retaliatory strike with weapons of mass destruction against Kyiv and the main NATO facilities, wherever they are. And this is already WWII, he added. The deputy chairman of the Security Council added that the current head of the White House, Joe Biden, deliberately allowed Ukraine to use American missiles to attack Russia before leaving office. The politician suggested that the American leader wanted to leave gracefully, taking with him a significant part of humanity. Medvedev recalled that the Ukrainian army had previously attempted to strike Russia with long-range missiles. It is not so important who and when made the decision to use NATO countries' long-range tactical ballistic and cruise missiles deep into the territory of Russia. Especially since there have already been attempts to use them in our country, the politician emphasized. The politician noted that Moscow's enemies are counting not only on the military effect of using long-range weapons, but also on the informational one. Medvedev said that the permission given by Western countries for Ukraine to strike deep into Russia is a deliberate escalation of the current conflict. He added that now the team of the elected US President Donald Trump will have to work hard to deal with the consequences of the decisions made by the Biden administration. Russian troops entered the center of the city of Chasiv Yar in the Donetsk region, the battle for which has been going on for more than 6 months. As build analyst Julian Ropke points out, Chasiv Yar is located on a hill and is protected from the east by the Seversky Donetsk-Donbass waterway. Russian troops were unable to cross it for a long time. However, they have now succeeded, and judging by the footage of street fighting, the Russian armed forces have almost reached the Avangard Stadium in the city center. As Ropke notes, Russian troops have been spotted for the first time in the center of Chasiv Yar, and there are no Ukrainian soldiers around ready for battle. We see complete ruins and the use of drones by the Ukrainians to attack the Russians. This always indicates that the Russians already control this territory and the Ukrainians are attacking them with drones from about 100 meters to the west, the build expert said. Ropke had previously noted that the occupiers had managed to break through to Kharkiv and consolidate their positions on its outskirts. According to him, the Russians now control 15% of the city. It is noted that the Ukrainian armed forces are under threat of encirclement near Kharkiv. They are separated from the north by a reservoir, and Russian troops are advancing from the east, southeast and southwest. The Russian armed forces managed to make a 5 to 6 kilometers advance and enter the village of Dalny in the center of the formed semi-cauldron. Thus, the Ukrainian defenders were divided. To the south of Dalny, several hundred Ukrainian armed forces soldiers continue to defend 5 to 6 villages on the banks of the Sukhuyli River. They are now surrounded from the north, south and east, the statement said. It is indicated that now the only way out of the encirclement for the Ukrainian armed forces fighters is the village of Konstantinopolskoye. According to Ropke, the Ukrainian troops will retreat in advance so as not to end up in a cauldron. He considers the situation in the south critical. As military expert Sergei Grabsky noted, the Kharkiv direction remains the main one for the Russians at this stage of the war. He noted that the enemy sets itself the task of reaching the line Chasiv Yar, Konstantinovka, Pokrovsk in the north, and from the south to align the front line. The point should be Konstantinopol-Andriivka.